A desperate Mustang stallion approached a ranch owner, defying every wild instinct. When the man discovered the reason behind this rare behavior, he couldn't believe his eyes. Prepare for a story that will touch your heart and reveal the extraordinary depth of love and intelligence in these majestic creatures. Early morning light spilled across Whispering Meadows Ranch as Nathan Blackwood, 42, began his daily chores. 3 generations of Blackwoods had raised horses on this land. But times had changed. Development was closing in, and the once thriving operation had dwindled to just for aged quarter horses and mounting debts. Nathan was lost in thought when an unusual sound caught his attention. Persistent thudding against the fence posts marking his eastern boundary. As he crested the small rise overlooking the pasture, he stopped in his tracks. There, pacing anxiously along his fence, was a magnificent wild Mustang stallion, a striking dun with primitive markings, and a black stripe running down his spine. "Where did you come from, boy?" Nathan murmured, keeping his distance. The ranch bordered federal land where wild horses still roamed, but in 15 years, Nathan had never seen one approach his property. Wild Mustangs were notoriously wary of humans. The stallion's head shot up at Nathan's voice. Rather than bolting, the horse fixed him with an intense stare, then resumed his agitated pacing with renewed urgency, pawing the ground and tossing his head toward the distant hills. Against better judgment, Nathan moved closer. The stallion, whom he mentally dubbed Spirit, continued his strange behavior, alternating between approaching the fence and retreating, always glancing back toward the eastern hills. "What's got you so worked up?" Nathan asked softly. Spirit approached the fence, stretched his neck across, and gently nudged Nathan's shoulder with his muzzle. Then he backed away and stared eastward again, eyes full of meaning. 15 years working with horses had taught Nathan to read equine body language, but this was beyond anything he'd ever experienced. The wild stallion wasn't acting aggressive or afraid. He seemed to be trying to communicate something specific. Nathan saddled his reliable mount, an aging gray quarter horse named Duke. As they rode toward the fence line, Spirit's agitation visibly increased. The moment Nathan opened the gate separating his property from public land, Spirit broke into a trot, moving ahead before stopping to look back, clearly waiting for Nathan to follow. "This is crazy," Nathan muttered, but he urged Duke forward. Spirit led Nathan across rugged terrain for nearly 2 miles, occasionally circling back when Nathan lagged behind. When they crested a rocky outcropping, Spirit quickened his pace, vanishing into a small, hidden ravine below. Nathan carefully guided Duke down the steep trail. What he saw at the bottom stole his breath away. There, lying on her side in clear distress, was a beautiful black mare, heavy with foal. Her sides heaved with labored breathing, and even to Nathan's untrained eye, it was obvious something was terribly wrong with her labor. Spirit rushed to the mare's side, gently nuzzling her neck, then turned to Nathan with an unmistakable plea in his intelligent eyes. In that instant, Nathan understood with perfect clarity. This wild stallion had sought human help as a last resort to save his dying mate. Nathan dismounted quickly, his mind racing. The black mare's condition was critical, her breathing shallow, her body occasionally shuddering with painful contractions. Spirit stood nearby, his attention split between the suffering mare and Nathan, as if weighing whether his desperate gamble on a human would pay off. "I'm not a vet," Nathan said aloud. He'd assisted with countless foalings on his ranch, but never with a wild Mustang in the middle of nowhere, and certainly not in a case this complicated. The mare merely rolled her eyes toward him, too exhausted to resist his presence. Nathan knelt beside her, gently running his hands over her distended belly. The foal was positioned in correctly a breech berth, possibly with a leg turned back. Without help, both the mare and foal would die. Nathan pulled out his cell phone, only to find no signal in the ravine. He faced a brutal choice: leave to get help, knowing the mare might die before he returned, or attempt the delivery himself. The mare's next contraction decided for him. A painful whinny tore from her throat, and Nathan saw a tiny hoof emerge, then recede. But it was a rear hoof, confirming his fear. "Okay, girl, we're doing this together," he said softly, removing his outer shirt to create a cleaner surface for his hands. What happened next would remain etched in Nathan's memory forever. As he positioned himself to assist, Spirit moved to the mare's head. The stallion stretched out beside her, positioning his body so her head could rest against his neck, offering comfort through touch. Working with careful precision, Nathan reached into the birth canal, feeling for the foal's position. One rear leg was properly aligned, but the other was folded back, blocking the birth. With gentle pressure, he located the misaligned leg and slowly worked to straighten it. The mare groaned, but remained surprisingly still. As if understanding his effort to help, Spirit stayed by her head, occasionally making soft nickering sounds that seemed to calm her. Finally, Nathan managed to align both rear legs. "Come on, little one," he urged, applying careful traction with each contraction. After what felt like hours, but was likely 40 minutes, the foal began to emerge properly. First the rear legs, then the hips and body, and finally, with one last powerful contraction, the head and front legs slipped free. A perfect black filly with a star-shaped white mark on her forehead lay motionless on the ground. Nathan's heart sank. He quickly cleared the foal's nostrils and mouth, then vigorously rubbed her tiny body to stimulate breathing. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on." Just when Nathan was about to lose hope, the filly's chest heaved and she drew her first breath. A moment later, she raised her head slightly, blinking in confusion. The mare struggled to rise. Nathan helped support her until she managed to stand on trembling legs. Within minutes, she began cleaning her newborn with gentle licks. Spirit approached cautiously, stretching his neck to sniff the tiny filly. His ears swiveled forward in clear approval before he turned to Nathan. The wild stallion approached slowly, maintaining eye contact. When he reached Nathan, he lowered his head in what could only be described as a gesture of gratitude. Nathan remained frozen, hardly daring to breathe during this unprecedented moment. After several seconds, Spirit raised his head and returned to his family, positioning himself protectively nearby as the newborn filly made her first wobbly attempts to stand. 3 days after the miraculous birth, Nathan found himself unable to stay away. Each morning and evening, he rode out to the hidden ravine, bringing water and sweet feed for the new mother. He kept a respectful distance, observing but never approaching too closely. The mare, whom he'd named Shadow for her midnight coat, was recovering well. Her foal, now called Nova for the star marking on her forehead, grew stronger every day. Spirit remained ever vigilant, but remarkably, he seemed to recognize Nathan as an ally, not a threat. On the 4th day, Nathan arrived to find the small family gone. A mix of disappointment and relief washed over him. This was the natural order. Wild horses belonged in the wilderness. He was about to turn Duke homeward when he spotted movement on the ridge above. There stood Spirit, Shadow, and tiny Nova watching him. After a moment, they disappeared over the ridge, returning to their wild lives. Nathan thought that would be the end of his extraordinary encounter. He was wrong. 1 week later, as Nathan repaired fencing along his eastern boundary, a familiar figure appeared on the horizon. Spirit approached cautiously, this time alone, stopping at a distance that preserved his freedom but allowed for observation. For nearly an hour, the wild stallion watched Nathan work. Just before leaving, Spirit came closer than ever before, stopping just 30 feet away. The Mustang stood tall, studied Nathan intently, then turned and galloped away. This pattern continued. Over the following weeks, Spirit appeared every few days, always alone, watching Nathan's work from ever closer vantage points. Nathan began to look forward to the visits, speaking aloud to the horse as he worked, sharing his ranch's struggles and his fears about the future. Talking to a wild horse, Nathan chuckled one evening, "Maybe I've been alone too long." The situation changed dramatically on a stormy autumn afternoon. Nathan was securing the barn when he heard urgent whinnying from the eastern fence. He emerged to find Spirit there, more agitated than he'd seen him since their first encounter. "What is it, boy?" Nathan called over the rising wind. The stallion paced anxiously, displaying the same communicative behavior he had shown the day of Nova's birth. Despite the darkening sky and the first heavy raindrops, Nathan saddled Duke and followed Spirit deeper into the wilderness. When they crested a hill overlooking a broad valley, Nathan understood the cause of Spirit's distress. Below them, a roundup was in progress. A helicopter darted low over the landscape, herding terrified Mustangs toward a temporary corral. Spirit's family, including Shadow and Nova, had been captured and now stood confined within the metal pens, the tiny filly pressed against her mother in fear as workers moved among the horses. Nathan's heart sank, though controversial. These roundups were legal and, according to officials, necessary for land management. Yet the desperate plea in Spirit's eyes made clear what the stallion was asking. "I can't just demand they release them," Nathan explained helplessly. Spirit paced, looking from Nathan to his trapped family and back again. The stallion had done the impossible once, approaching a human for help against every wild instinct. Now he was doing it again, displaying a level of trust that humbled Nathan to his core. Nathan watched the roundup operation, racking his brain for a solution. Spirit pawed the ground impatiently, sensing Nathan's hesitation. Then an idea struck him. A risky, possibly illegal idea. He remembered his grandfather mentioning a provision in the Wild Horse and Burro Act owners could reclaim horses that had strayed onto public lands. It was a long shot, but Nathan approached the operations supervisor, introducing himself as the owner of the neighboring ranch, that black mare and her foal. Nathan said, pointing toward Shadow and Nova, "They're not wild horses. They wandered off my property after the foal was born." The supervisor looked skeptical. "Do you have any proof of ownership?" Nathan took a deep breath. "The foal has a distinctive star marking. I have documentation back at my ranch. I helped deliver her when the mare had complications. It wasn't entirely a lie." The supervisor studied Nathan's face, then looked at the black mare and her unusual foal. "That little one is awfully young to be going through this stress," the man finally said. "If you can bring documentation showing the mare belongs to you, we can release it." "And the stallion," Nathan added quickly, "the dun with primitive markings. He's their sire, part of my small private herd." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "3 horses? That's a big request." "I have all the documentation," Nathan insisted, praying his confidence masked his deception. After tense negotiation, the supervisor agreed to hold the 3 horses separately until Nathan returned with proof. As Nathan rode back to prepare the documentation, he felt Spirit following at a distance, as if understanding a plan was in motion. 2 hours later, Nathan returned with carefully prepared records showing ownership of all 3 horses. He'd weathered the papers and included old photos of similar-looking horses from his grandfather's breeding program. Whether the supervisor truly believed him or simply found the paperwork sufficient to cover liability, Nathan couldn't tell. But as sunset approached, 3 Mustangs were loaded into Nathan's borrowed trailer instead of government transport vehicles. As they drove away, Nathan could hardly believe what he'd done. He had just committed fraud against a federal agency to save 3 wild horses who, by law, weren't his to claim. The question now was, what would he do with them once he got them home? He parked near his old round pen and opened the trailer doors. Shadow and Nova moved directly into the enclosure, clearly preferring the open space to the trailer's confinement. Spirit was another matter. The proud stallion remained in the trailer, eyeing Nathan warily. Had Nathan betrayed the wild horse's trust by bringing him into captivity? "You're free to go if that's what you want," Nathan said softly. "I'll leave the trailer open tonight. Stay or go, it's your choice." He secured the round pen gate to ensure Shadow and Nova's safety, but left the trailer doors open, offering Spirit a path back to the wilderness. That morning light revealed the choice Spirit had made. The trailer stood empty, but the stallion hadn't returned to the wild. Instead, he stood just outside the round pen, remaining as close to his family as possible while preserving his freedom. When Nathan approached with water and hay, Spirit backed away to a watchful distance, but didn't run. His eyes followed Nathan's every move as he cared for Shadow and Nova. Over the following days, a routine developed. The mare and foal grew comfortable with Nathan's presence, while Spirit maintained his vigilant position outside the pen, gradually allowing Nathan to come closer before retreating. 2 weeks into this arrangement, A government SUV rolled up his drive. A woman in a Bureau of Land Management uniform stepped out. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm Agent Rebecca Martinez. We need to discuss the Mustangs you claimed at the recent gathering." Nathan's stomach dropped. Had his deception been discovered? "I've reviewed your documentation," she continued, studying his face, "and something seemed unusual. So, I did some research into your family's history with horses." Nathan braced himself for handcuffs. "Your grandfather, William Blackwood, was one of the first advocates for humane treatment of wild horses in this region," she said instead. "He worked with the BLM to develop better management practices. Back in the 70s, Nathan nodded cautiously. He believed they deserved respect. Agent Martinez glanced toward the round pen, where Nova was nursing. "That's a special foal, and the bond between that stallion and mare is remarkable. Most captured stallions don't adjust well to captivity." She turned back to Nathan. "I have a proposal. The BLM is launching a new program, a sanctuary system for select Mustang family bands to be studied and protected. We need private ranchers willing to partner with us, providing land where these horses can live relatively freely, while allowing research and educational access." Nathan stared at her, speechless. "Your ranch would be perfect," she continued, "especially given your family's history with these animals. The BLM would provide funding for fencing, water systems, and basic maintenance. You'd receive a stipend as a program manager." "Why are you offering this?" Nathan asked. "If you suspect my documentation isn't perfect," Agent Martinez smiled slightly, "let's just say that sometimes bending the rules for the right reasons deserves recognition, rather than punishment. Besides, that little filly needs stability, not a government-holding facility." By sunset, Nathan sat on his porch with a signed preliminary agreement. His failing ranch would become Whispering Meadows Wild Horse Sanctuary, a safe haven, not just for Spirit's family, but potentially dozens of other Mustangs that would otherwise face uncertain futures. As darkness fell, Nathan walked to the round pen. Shadow and Nova rested peacefully inside, while Spirit stood his usual watch nearby. This time, when Nathan approached, the wild stallion didn't retreat. "We did it, boy," Nathan said softly. "Your family is safe, and you've saved this ranch too." Spirit extended his muzzle toward Nathan's outstretched hand, not quite touching, but closer than ever before. A bridge between two worlds, built on trust, and an impossible plea for help that had changed everything. 6 months transformed Whispering Meadows by Baytrust recognition. New fencing extended the sanctuary to cover over 300 acres, with natural water sources enhanced to support the growing herd. 15 more Mustangs had joined Spirit's family, all rescued from holding facilities or scheduled. ROUNDUPS. Nathan, now officially the sanctuary's manager, had embraced his new purpose with surprising passion, working alongside BLM biologists and equine behavior specialists. He helped document the complex social structures and communication patterns of the Mustang bands. Nova, now a lanky 6-month-old, had become the sanctuary's unofficial ambassador. Unlike most foals born in captivity, she showed no fear of humans, perhaps remembering on some level that a human had helped bring her into the world. Her curious, friendly nature made her a favorite when school groups visited. Shadow remained cautious, but accepted Nathan's presence without anxiety. And Spirit, the proud stallion, had established an extraordinary relationship with Nathan. Based on mutual respect, though still unmistakably wild, he would now approach within arm's reach, occasionally accepting apple slices from Nathan's open palm. The most remarkable development came in the form of visitors. Word of the sanctuary and its extraordinary founding story had spread through social media and equine conservation circles. People traveled from across the country to witness the Mustang family that had sought human help and found a champion. On a crisp spring morning, Nathan guided a special tour, a group of government officials considering expanding the sanctuary program nationwide. Among them was Senator James Harmon, chair of the committee overseeing public lands. "The research being conducted here is changing how we understand these animals," Nathan explained as they observed the herd from a respectful distance. "They're not just random bands of feral horses. They have complex family bonds, problem-solving abilities, An emotional intelligence we're only beginning to comprehend. Senator Harmon nodded thoughtfully. I've been on the fence about wild horse management for years. The current system isn't working for ranchers, for environmentalists, and certainly not for the horses. As if on cue, Spirit appeared on a nearby ridge, Nova prancing playfully at his side. The stallion surveyed the visitors, then did something that left the officials murmuring in amazement. He began walking directly toward the group, the young filly following trustingly. Stay very still, Nathan advised quietly. This is extremely unusual behavior. Spirit approached within 20 feet of the officials, close enough for them to see the intelligence in his eyes. Nova, emboldened by her sire's confidence, ventured even closer, her star-shaped marking gleaming in the sunlight. My God, Senator Harmon whispered. She's beautiful. For several breathtaking minutes, the wild horses regarded the humans who would soon decide the fate of their kind across the western states. Then, with a soft nicker, Spirit turned away, Nova reluctantly following. The senator stood silent for a long moment after they departed. I've been working on public lands issues for 15 years, he finally said. I've heard every argument on both sides, but I've never seen anything like this. Like them. 1 month later, the American Wild Horse Conservation Act was introduced with bipartisan support. The bill proposed a network of sanctuaries modeled after Whispering Meadows, a gradual end to mass roundups, and dedicated funding for research into Mustang behavior and humane management practices. When Nathan saw the news, he walked to the eastern pasture where it had all begun. Spirit stood there as if waiting for him, Shadow and Nova grazing nearby. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? Nathan said softly. Finding me that day, bringing me to Shadow, coming back. When they were captured, the Mustang regarded him steadily, wild and proud, yet somehow connected across the species divide. You've changed everything, Nathan told him, not just for your family but for all of them. In response, Spirit did something unprecedented. He stepped forward and gently pressed his forehead against Nathan's shoulder for just a moment, before backing away. A gesture of trust, of connection, of gratitude. The message couldn't have been clearer if he'd spoken in human words. 5 years later, Nathan stood on the observation deck of the Whispering Meadows Visitor Center, watching as a group of international researchers documented the behavior of the sanctuary's newest foal. What had begun with one desperate stallion seeking help for his mate had blossomed into a revolutionary program that had transformed wild horse management. Across the American West, the sanctuary network now protects over 5,000 Mustangs, allowing family bands to remain together while offering opportunities for scientific study and public education. The research conducted at Whispering Meadows led to groundbreaking discoveries about equine intelligence, emotional bonds, and communication, findings that challenged humans to reconsider their relationship with these magnificent creatures. Nova, now a beautiful mare in her own right, had become something of a celebrity. Her unusual comfort with humans made her an ideal subject for studies on Mustang cognition. Scientists had documented her solving complex puzzles, recognizing herself in mirrors, and even appearing to comprehend basic symbolic language abilities once thought beyond equine capacity. Shadow remained in the sanctuary, though age had begun to silver her muzzle, and Spirit, the remarkable stallion who had started it all, still led his band with dignity, though he now tolerated the presence of younger stallions who would one day take his place. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in how people viewed these animals, not as nuisances, but as sentient, social, deeply intelligent beings who deserved more than survival. They deserved freedom. No longer dismissed as mere feral livestock, wild Mustangs had come to be recognized as intelligent beings worthy of protection, reverence, and respect. School curricula across the nation now include their story, held up as a shining example of conservation, success, and the unexpected depths of animal consciousness. As Nathan watched the researchers at work, he sensed a familiar presence behind him. He turned slowly. Spirit stood just a few feet away, having quietly left his band to visit the observation area, something he did from time to time, always on his own terms. Hello, old friend, Nathan said softly. The stallion's coat had lightened with age, now flecked with gray. But his eyes still gleamed with that same fierce intelligence that had once led him to seek out a human in his family's hour of need. "They're writing a book about you, you know," Nathan continued, "about how one Mustang changed the way we see all of you." Spirit's ears flipped forward as if he understood. For a long, quiet moment, they stood in companionable silence, a man and a wild horse, who had somehow bridged the ancient divide between their worlds. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low over the sanctuary, Nathan watched from afar as Spirit rejoined his band. Nova trotted up to greet her sire, now leading a foal of her own, a dun colt with the same star-shaped marking she bore. The circle continued. Wisdom passes from one generation to the next. And in that peaceful, golden hour, Nathan understood the most profound lesson Spirit had ever taught him, that compassion can flow in both directions across the species barrier, and that sometimes the most extraordinary bonds are formed when we simply recognize the intelligence and feeling in another being's eyes. "Thank you," Nathan whispered, though he knew the horses couldn't hear. "Thank you for saving the ranch from bankruptcy, for the purpose found in middle age, for the legacy that would outlive them all." As if in response, Spirit raised his head and looked across the valley directly toward Nathan. Then, with calm dignity, he turned and led his family into the shelter of the hills as darkness fell once more. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes in the incredible bonds between humans and animals. And help us spread the message: compassion can bridge even the widest divides in our world.